There we go. Call's now being recorded.
Thank you. And then we also have Google Doc for taking the live minutes. Just to make sure everybody has that link, I'm pasting it in the GoToMeeting chat again. So the main agenda for today is the draft convergence plan, which currently exists in a pull request out on the dev policy. I sent out a link to that yesterday, and we can get there's a link to it in the minutes document, and then I'll post it again here. Basically what this document is starting to do is kind of lay out the plan for for merging the two projects back together, the actual concrete steps. Previously we talked about kind of the development policy at a higher level, the actual processes. This starts to get into the actual groundwork for bringing the repositories together. Basically what we need primarily out of this call is to see if everyone is in agreement on this plan, if there's anything that's missing, if there's anything that needs to change, and start figuring out the timeline for when we will do this work. Just as a level set, apparently the actual foundation launch announcement looks like now they're looking at June for that announcement. I don't know what all the conversation is going into that, but I have asked that whatever the announcement plans are, that they be brought to the TC before the announce, so that all of us can review what's happening with that. So we're all on the same page. So as soon as I have more information about that, I will let everyone know. Okay.
So is there like a window of time between the foundation being set up and the foundation announcement going out? And I mean, are we waiting on that announcement to do any of the actual convergence work? Like, would we? Yeah.
Okay. Good, Mike.
I was going to say, the groups can certainly start, in the code and whatnot, start doing some of the convergence work. There's nothing to, require you to wait. The launch plan is really just sort of getting a lot of lawyers lined up on things like bylaws, where we got some surprise late last week from one of the lawyers who sent in a bunch of new comments, and so we're trying to get things finalized so we can get some of the just basic structural things locked down. Right now there's been a little bit of wordsmithing that's delayed things a bit. We'll get through that very quickly, and then the announcement is more just sort of like a public statement that really doesn't have any bearing on actually launching or forming or doing anything in the project. So right. I would not let that sort of hang you up on anything, unless if somebody has a particular concern. But we're probably looking at like late May, early June to do a formal public announcement if we can get everything lined up, if the communities are continuing to move forward and everything's looking good.
So at this point, I would think that the largest concern on when we can actually start the steps is to make sure that the two projects are both in agreement on the steps themselves. So is there agreement on both the Node.js and the IIJS side that merging these two projects is going to happen under the foundation? At that point, we can start.
That's a good question. So we haven't voted on it yet. I think like most TC members in the IIJS organization are expecting it to happen. But yeah, it's not so easy to tell if like if a large group of people is generally in agreement with these things.
Well, I think that you could also separate this into two different things, right? One is that are we done and in agreement on all the policies and on the convergence document, right? So we just got the convergence document. There needs to be some period of time for like other people from IOJS to weigh in. But basically, like if there is nothing objectionable, are we good now? Let's consider these more or less finalized. Then there's a step where we go, okay, now we need to bring it to the larger community and to the working groups and say like, hey, we're going to join. Here's all the policies.
Yeah.
Because we can't bring it to a vote with everybody and say, oh, and also like we're going to change a bunch of the policies on you potentially, right?
Yeah, that's true. And I think there's still also it's not exactly clear. No, how do I say this? Some people say, well, if we merge, it's not certain that we'll keep making progress, and it will it will not be just nothing happening or someone is stalling the process. So in that sense, like I think we should probably put this convergence document up somewhere where where like Ben and stuff people have the chance to look at it, and Rod. And the other thing, I guess, would be that with this, we need to work together. And it's a bit unfortunate that we have this meeting and half of the IOJS TC doesn't show up, and half of the Node.js TC doesn't show up. So there's no real like working together starting here. And I wonder if we can find a way. Oh, sorry.
I mean, this is all very procedural, though. I mean, like if you look at the amount of participants that we have and say like some changes to governance on the IOJS side, not everybody wants to participate in that. Like some people just kind of trust that if the people that are working on it are going to get it done, right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it is like they don't want to be involved in this thing, but if we had like something happening in code, they would probably be more active, right?
Yes, that's definitely true. But but that's also not happening because like IOJS we are making decisions, but there's nobody, from the Node.js TC who would have like influence on that process currently participating in it, and vice versa, of course. Like nobody from IOJS is participating in the Node.js TCs. So what I think
say what?
Just a reminder that some people are working across both projects.
Yeah, Trevor's been in some of the Node stuff.
Yeah, I think the point is definitely valid. We need to make sure that when it comes to the actual work progress, we do have broader cooperation between the two projects, and we need to work on that and work on getting the regular joint TC call going. We had some issues with scheduling and figuring that out and what's going to be fair, but I think we need to keep pushing on getting that regular call set up to deal with the day-to-day stuff. Before we get to that point, though, this notion that we have to make sure that we're pretty well set on what the policies are going to be. Yes, we need to get to that point where this is fairly stable. We acknowledge that changes could be made as we go through the process, but here's the stable target. What does the community think about that?
So my impression, kind of echoing a little bit of what Bert's saying, is that, maybe also Michael, I think even getting some code put towards the convergence, like even getting a little bit of work merging various commits from joint node into IOJS and showing the TC that the portions of the TC that are concerned about slowdown, that they won't have to, that there is this process can go on and we won't lose momentum, I think would probably do a lot more towards convincing than reading documents would for that side.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we keep getting into this order of operations problem where we block one thing on the next thing and on the next thing. And I'd like to just try to parallelize this as much as possible and incentivize people to like get involved and cooperate. And I think that you could almost structure it in a sense that the IOJS project as a whole with all the working groups could vote to join the foundation and move everything into like the foundation org and start moving the assets over and continue doing releases. And then this Convergence repo spins up, and that's where the Node.js existing TC and the IOJSC are collaborating together. And it's the same thing with some of the working groups around like the website and evangelism. Like they're going to have projects now that they need to collaborate on in this new, organization. They can take on that work and start kind of more naturally participating with each other, rather than we keep trying to line up this. Okay, well we have two people that aren't under the same foundation yet. Like, how do we get them all into a room talking about something that isn't code yet? Right?
Yeah.
So let's put it into a concrete step. So one of the proposals in the Convergence plan is to have this new Node.js Foundation organization under GitHub. The proposal, because of the work that's gone in already into setting up the IOJS organization, would be that the existing IOJS organization would be moved to the foundation and simply renamed. But if we have this chicken and egg problem where we're not sure if IOJS is going to join yet, then then just renaming and moving may not, wouldn't be appropriate. So we have two options. One, we go ahead and create a new organization for Node.js Foundation and create the new repo there, then we start the work. Or we create a new repo under IOJS to represent this combined project and keep the IOJS organization where it currently is until the decision is made. The risk with that approach, of course, is if IOJS as an organization is a group that chooses not to come in, then we have to go through and set up the Node Foundation organization anyway and bring everything over.
Well, I think that, okay, so with the Convergence document, say that we get the last bits of the Convergence document done. I think that IOJS could vote for IOJS joining the foundation next week. We could start that process. It'd probably take about a week of comments and stuff, but and I would write a post and some of the people write posts about like why we actually need to move into a foundation and some of the problems that we're already hitting just as the IOJS project. And then so that could move over on a pretty quick timeline. And then we would have the org set up for the foundation. Then we could create the Convergence repo, all that kind of stuff.
So that would be 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks scheduled out of when we would actually have the Node Foundation organization in GitHub and a decision of whether we're creating a new one or moving IOJS. Is that reasonable?
Just to echo what I said in chat, alternatively, we could, if you wanted to fork, or if someone wanted to fork IOJS and start the work there before we get the GitHub organization set up, we could at least have some code to show both sides before the organization gets even set up.
And honestly, that's something that I could probably do.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think also like. Oh, sorry. I was just saying, like, the clearer that we make it to people that moving into the foundation, like, after that step happens, there will still be a bunch of IOJS releases, and we'll continue, like, getting them out while the Convergence work is happening. That's going to calm a lot of people down that are worried about the Convergence actually mucking up the works for, like, the release train and all that. So.
That's true. I echo this sentiment.
It needs to be stressed that the Convergence repo is for the next major release. So even though the IOJS is marching along and they could have major releases, whatever point that Convergence repo takes over is going to be the next major release after that. So it's not going to slow down the work at all, but it needs to be recognized that there's going to be some parallel, pull requests need to be landed in both. Right? There's going to be some parallel work going on but it's not going to slow down what's actually happening in the existing release lines.
So I wonder if it's like really, it's probably in this document anyway. Like what we could also do is just create a new repo and like only work on the convergence on the next version basically there, and like keep the old repos around for now.
Yeah, that's the current plan.
Okay.
The plan is to create a new repo, which is a fork of IOJS currently, and pull the Node.js commits on top, so that in the converged repo, whatever previously worked in either project pre-merge continues to work post-merge. And then we iterate from there if there's any disagreements on the design and implementation. But it's in a separate repo that is maintained independently of the other two release lines.
Right. Okay.
Right, and also just as a point of kind of technical whatever, it'll be a Git fork, but it won't be a GitHub fork because you can't have a network fork in the same org of the same repo.
Right. Right.
Right. That doesn't really matter, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I guess we could just start. So, Michael, what you were saying is, yeah, put this document up and like get it voted through, or take comments and maybe, if changes need to be made.
Yeah, I mean, we've got 30 minutes here. Like, let's knock through like the high-level points of the convergence doc, and what I think is probably going to be the most contentious, and then anybody on either side right now can kind of voice their discontent so we can talk through it.
Yeah.
So basically the plan is like we move over the IOJS org, we create a new repo to converge everything together. I've suggested that joint node stay a joint node because it's kind of unnecessary to move it until after the convergence, and then all it's going to do is like screw up the existing Node.js releases and all of the build pointers and everything. So just leave that there, doing concurrent releases as well. Everybody from both core projects gets added to the new core team, and the new core team and same thing with collaborators get added to the new convergence doc repo. We get a clean slate for issues. We adopt the IOJS issue policy. Then, so all of the tags and all of the branches for prior releases go into that on both IOJS and Node.js. They're obviously going to fall into the LTS stuff. And then master will start with IOJS and then start porting over all of the feature changes that have happened in 012. And is 013 as well?
Yeah, we're working on 013. Yeah.
Okay. So that work ports over. So then once we get to a point where both of the projects are sort of converged there, we'll do the next major release. There will just be a major release with all of that from everywhere. During this process, where we're merging stuff together, nobody gets to object to any of the features or changes that came in from either of the other lines. You can object later after there's been a release, but the objection has to be in the form of, hey, remove this, or hey, change this. And it will be, an API removal or breaking change removal for the next major. And the reason is because, like, if we're thinking about it as a converged point, we want everything from both of them. And if you want to remove something, then you need to think of it that way. And we all want to think of it that way. And we need to have at least one major release where everything is kind of combined.
The only caveat to that is if there are specific conflicts in the way a particular thing was implemented that we need to revise as part of the merge in order to have something that actually works.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I know there are issues like that. For example, timers are really different, but those are implementation things. But the thing here is that in IOJS we probably wouldn't be able to carry over commits from Node.js, although we can of course look at like which code is better and then just pick that. The other thing, Michael, is I think I don't agree with like making a major release first and after that start thinking about what makes sense. Of course, it's we don't want to nitpick on every little detail. But you know, if you tell people, yeah, you're in the TC now, your job is to port these things over, and you cannot object to them, that's not really going to work. Like everybody will just be pissed off.
Well, no, I mean you can object to them. They need to be in the form of a removal, right? Because I mean, like people from either side of this are going to be thinking as all of these changes from the other side being additive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you object to things differently when they're additive rather than removal, right? And so you can definitely object to them, but they need to be removal based, right? I think like the internationalization object is a really good example of this, where like yes, there are like complaints that people may have about the implementation that exists, but it does exist and it is in. And if you were going to put up a removal of it, you would have to come up with some kind of alternative that maintained enough of it for that objection to be taken seriously, right? Whereas like it's
And if there are areas like the internationalization stuff where we know in advance that that it's controversial, then we should be having conversations on how to resolve those conflicts before it lands, with the intention of yes, something landing, but that doesn't necessarily mean we can't make changes through the process. The stated intent is that everything should continue to work, but in practice there may need to be some exception given.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so of course the internationalization work is something I complain a lot about, but it's not what I have on my mind when I say I want to be able to object to things. But I think on like it's not always clear what's going on on the other side.
Yeah.
Well, what if we phrase it differently? So rather than saying after the first major, we basically say, look, all of the code goes in, and then if you want to object to something, you just you literally log a pull request that removes it or changes it in some way, and then that goes through the TSC process. So we just treat it like we treat it like a new PR rather than a sort of like convergence PR. And that's also, I mean, I really just want to make the work easier on converging the code bases together. Like, whoever sits down and does all of this work, and it is a lot of work, the faster they get it done, the easier it's going to be long term, and they don't want to have to run every individual commit by the TSC.
No, I totally get that. So what I've previously done when bringing over Node 0.10 commits into IOJS is just pick everything, make a really long pull request, and then people can look at all the individual commits, and if they have like issues with one particular one, I can remove it or change that particular commit, and then after a while, you land the entire pull request. I think a strategy like that might also work. Like if someone actually starts working on a merged repo, you just create a pull request against IOJS and Node from that source, and then you will see what gets added.
It seems like, sorry.
No, I was done.
It seems like we could start to look at what are things that are either known to be controversial, likely to be, and start discussing them. I know I'm trying to keep up with some of the discussions on both IOJS and the Node.js side around Intel, and hope to continue that. Are there any other topics like that should be identified ahead of time or during time, just so that those discussions can start happening?
So what I brought up on the convergence policy issue was Node has implemented this support for flaky tests, and we've removed that, and there's still been commits from Node that have gone in for supporting that more. And that would be a good case to look at, since it will probably come up, I imagine.
Right. So for things like that, just in general, if something was added to Node and it's been there for a while, and it was explicitly removed from IOJS, then the the idea of bringing it back from Node and adding it back in would need to be done after the merge, and it would need to be handled as a
revert. You got to look at it though, if it's going to be a breaking change for node users.
Yeah, I understand that.
Like flaky tests, I don't know, is that going to break the end users or not?
It's not like an API change, no.
Right. So I think you got to take that context in terms of, if something's been removed that's going to be an API change, then I think that's got to be sticky. But if things like the tests, I think we've got to be more flexible about.
Yeah.
Right. And a case would need to be made to add those back in. So.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, in this particular case, flaky test doesn't seem like a big issue to me because we can indeed, it's not an API change, so we can go, we can meander all we want and nobody will notice. So yeah, whatever. But for API things, it's a little bit more difficult. But I think there's, as I said, there's not so many controversial things. I think the Intel is probably the most pressing one, and then I think in Node it had, it added back SSLv2 support, I think, at some point, which we very deliberately did not, and we actually removed, I think, SSLv3 even. And so, I think those are the only changes I can think of, actually. I wonder, though, if there's people from Node.js that have objections to certain things IOJS has done, because of course you also have to support a user base.
Right, and I guess that's where, as soon as you say it's not going to be all from both, you open up the discussion both ways, right?
Yes, that's true. But actually, I wouldn't mind, at least, we can make a discussion later, but I would like to know if there's anything that you guys would object to.
Well, let's take that as a to-do for each of the individual TCs over the next, let's say, 2 weeks.
Okay.
Go through those items. First, I think we need to make sure we catalog them, and then go through the items and make sure to see if there's any major objections. And then, if there are, we like the INTL stuff. We try to start the conversations early on how we're going to resolve those conflicts. And in the meantime, the non-controversial things can go ahead and start landing.
Yeah. By the way, I'm not going to make INTL into a roadblock, so don't worry.
Well, we're working on ways on how to get a reconciliation on that, so I don't think that one's too much of a concern.
Nice.
Okay, so I think we're pretty well in agreement here. It's just a matter of when, what the steps, or how we actually execute on the steps. So what it sounds like we need to do, in the interim, until we get the organization figured out, which hopefully we'll have a decision within the next 2 to 3 weeks on the IOJS side of whether we're going to create or move.
Mm-hmm.
But in the interim, we need to have a fork created of IOJS as it currently stands, and what I would propose is that it's a fork of the 2.0, just the master, wherever master is at. I know you guys are looking at your 2.0 right now. We'll take that as the baseline. I can create. I can go ahead and create that fork. We just got to figure out exactly where it's going to land. I can worry about the details there. It's a temporary location, regardless. We create that fork and gives us a location to start landing those the merge commits, and we can start working on that in parallel to the decision of whether the organization is going to move or be created.
Yeah. Sounds good. So. Yeah, what also needs to happen is we need to put this Convergence doc somewhere up for review and voting in the organization.
Yep.
Is there any reason we couldn't just make a node convergence organization to hold this stuff temporarily?
That's what I was thinking. Create a temporary org for now.
But they get so massive, Can we not just already put it in the Node.js org or something? Mike, you have access to the Node.js org. Mike Dolan.
I don't think I do.
Yeah, so you have to accept the invite, but the previous owner of the organization transferred it to you, but you have to like click a button on GitHub somewhere.
So my preference here is
if you log into GitHub and go to GitHub/Node.js, you should see it on the top banner. It'll say view your installation.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'll try that again.
My preference for working off of a fork here is just to work off of a personal fork. Like that way we don't have to mess with organization stuff. The ultimate goal is to produce a pull request, I imagine. So
that's true.
No need to make it more complicated, I don't think.
Okay.
All right, makes sense.
All right, so I'll take the to-do on that, and we'll get that going here within the next week. And then, actually, hopefully it'll just be within a couple of days, but I'll give myself a week. Get that set up, and then we can start the process for actually doing the merges. And for now, I will set that up for the core teams of both projects to land with the commit bid on those.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can expand it out from there, however the CC feels is appropriate. And then once we actually figure out the organization part, I can transfer the ownership of that repo to the organization, and off we go.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. As far as the Convergence doc is concerned, I probably make one or two more edits based on the feedback, and then I will land that pull request. So it'll be sitting in the dev policy repo for review by the various communities. And then let's get another one of these calls set up in 2 to 3 weeks to review the progress on this. That gives hopefully next week and the week after for the IOGS community to make a decision.
Yeah. So practically speaking, should we just like boot up an issue to this document with a link to this document, or Michael, you are the expert in residence here.
I mean, we did one to the older document. I mean, the pull request needs to land, and then if we could get just the links to the tags that's a little bit smaller. This document isn't as hard to read as the other one in terms of just length and stuff, so I think that we could just post a simple issue to it.
Yeah.
And I'll post it and then lock it so that we're literally pointing it at the other repo so that people should go and comment there.
Sounds good.
This is
so immediately after this. I was going to say, immediately after this call, I'll make those edits and land the pull request so we can get that started.
Awesome.
I did accept. I'm now an owner of the Node.js organization. This is Mike Dolan. So what did you want me to do? Create a new repository and call it Node Convergence?
If you would, add me as an owner, and I'll then go in and I'll create the fork of IOGS under the organization.
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as no one objects to that, I'll.
Who is that?
This is James.
Oh, James. Okay.
Yeah, you probably should add. You should probably add a couple of owners, maybe also Michael and Julian and some other people.
Do we want to just say that the TCs of both projects, add them as owners?
Oh yeah, that could also work.
Yeah, let's just do that.
If we don't, then the issue becomes at some point the repo needs to be created, and then we have to track down someone who is on holiday. It all gets very painful if there's only one.
Well, wait. Okay, so if we don't name the Node.js Foundation repo Node.js Foundation and instead use this Node.js one, we're going to get into a problem when we try to use to move IOJS to it. In particular, like we're going to get this. If you create the repo there, we're going to hit this double forward problem where you're going to have to add it to IOJS and then we're going to have to move it again. And I don't know if GitHub will work for double forwards like that. It may be better to just do the Convergence repo under your personal GitHub and add people to it.
Okay.
Okay, that's also fine.
So I'll take the step on that, and I'll just add it under my personal JA Snell personal account now, and I'll add the TC as collaborators on that repo.
Oh, that sounds good. Yeah.
Oh, should I cancel it?
No, you don't have to cancel anything, Mike.
That's fine. We're just not going to create the repo there yet.
Okay.
So, but honestly, having this Node.js as the organization, that's awesome. I was looking at Node.js Foundation, which is a mouthful. So if we can just, this is good.
It's way too long to type.
Yeah. Okay, so are we on the same page as far as the next steps are concerned?
I'm good.
Any concerns from either project? Looks like Julian is saying yep in the chat. Okay. 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 I think that gets us rolling. So that's fantastic. We even did it with 10 minutes left to spare in the call. So great.
Great. All right.
Unless anyone has anything more to talk on that one, there is one other topic, which is some of the proposed work groups for the foundation work groups, not specific to either of the projects, but for the foundation itself.
I have to work.
What are the proposed work groups?
Okay, Michael, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I'm here.
Can you talk through those? I'm sorry, Michael Dawson. I forgot how many Michaels we have on the call. Michael Dawson.
There was there's two originally, and James opened another one. And I sent out an email with the pointer to the repo that I opened them in. One is about benchmarking, so trying to work together to come up with what we think are good benchmarks for Node. The other one is around mostly, I think I called it post-mortem debugging, so generating dumps and then using those dumps to be able to debug what was going on at the time that the dump was taken. And the third one was the one that James submitted recently, which is around, working out, I think, the way forward on internationalization and the issues that are being raised on that front. And, the idea we have is that, we want to start this work under the dev policy and the sort of the guidelines that we've set up for the foundation. And, we have some people who are interested in getting that going, as of now versus waiting until the foundation's all in place.
Yeah. Well, of course, I have no objections to that. The question is if there's enough people to fill all these working groups, and it's not the same people in every working group.
Okay, so for the two working groups I proposed, I have a set of people who've shown interest, like 3 to 4 people who are interested in each of them.
Mm-hmm.
We have people who are for the post-mortem debugging one, there's somebody within the group that I work in who's willing to lead that work and set up the meetings and drive that forward.
Nice.
Similarly, on the benchmarking front, I'm going to volunteer to push that forward, and I think James is looking to push the internationalization forward. For those, we do have some external people involved as well, like on the post-mortem debugging, there's some people from Joint who are interested, as well as one person from Google, and we're hoping that we can pull in a few people from the IOJS communities as well to get involved in those.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I guess you've got a couple options. Like, one, we could create a team and a repo in IOJS, and you could just do it there. You could create a personal repo and just point people at it, and I'll get the IOJS, like Twitter and the evangelism people kind of promoting that they exist somewhere. The problem with doing it in the Node.js org is if you end up using it, that's problematic. Literally, like having a repo anywhere else is better, including your.
I just created, I've created the descriptions in my own repo, like under my name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. until we have the foundation.
Yeah. I mean, so the foundation, if you look at the work group project lifecycle, there's sort of two bootstrap phases. One is like inside the foundation and one is outside. So like if you just want to bring a work group that's established, well, it kind of gets fast-tracked. Because we don't have the org already, you could just create the repo somewhere else. And there's no approval process for that. Like you can just start basically any member of the organization, which everybody here will be a member of the foundation org once it's there. Anybody can just start a working group and get moving. You're just not entitled to any legal resources or anything like that,
Sure.
which don't exist yet, so that's not a problem. And and then once we have the foundation mechanics there, and you feel like it's established, then you can just write a charter, and then it gets approved by the TSC. But even there's no approval process if you just want to get this stuff going.
Yeah, I think we just wanted to make sure that we'd advertised it enough to the IOJS community to say, hey, are these things you want to get involved with now?
Yeah, I would just create an issue in IOJS/evangelism, and then there's a bunch of people there that will pick it up and promote it on Twitter and get it into the weekly update and get it to all the places people look, and then that should get a good portion of the community involved in the working group.
Okay, so basically just open an issue there pointing to the description saying, we're starting these working groups. If you're interested, let us know, right? Is that the...
Yep. And especially for the international edition one, I would have something really good about the scope, because there's obviously a huge translation community in IOJS, but I don't know how many of them. Some of them may try to get involved, not understanding that it's more of the kind of implementation side of it and not the translation side. So that's all.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be made clear that the Intel group is for ECMA, what was it, 403? Unless that is for translations and stuff also.
I think it's 402, technically. I think it's 402.
Yeah, I'll submit a pull request into this proposal with some updated linkage and wording.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, good. So yeah, we'll get started on those then.
Sounds good. Okay, just while that conversation was going on, just to let everybody know, I went ahead and created the Node.js Convergence fork on my personal and added the core teams from both to it. I took on the IOJS side, there was the core team itself. I just added all the members from that. And on the Node.js side, there was the Node core team project, which are a team that I just had all the members from that. So
IOJS's core team isn't quite up to date.
Okay. So
the one you would want to look at is TC.
Also, we also have 30 collaborators, right, in the collaborators team.
Okay.
Or actually, probably less in the team, because the people in the TC don't get added to that team because it's unnecessary. But you may want to also add the other committers to IOJS to it, which are in the collaborators group.
Okay. That's a rather large group, correct? Yeah.
Yep.
30 members, okay.
Is it not possible to just add the entire group, like add IOJS/TC, and it's done, or does that not work?
So IOJS groups only work within IOJS, and that's the same for every org, unfortunately.
Yeah,
that sucks.
You have to add each one individually, so that's going to be fun. But yeah, I'll do that here in just a second. You said TC. What's his GitHub account? Do you know?
No. There's a TC group.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no problem. Okay. There we go. Okay, then I think we're done. We'll set up another joint meeting within, let's say, 2 weeks or 3 weeks. We'll look at the schedule and figure out the exact time, and we'll go from there.
What I would suggest is just take this exact time and day and do it in 2 weeks. A doodle poll, it's hard to engage people, and if they know if they can just get their mind set on this might happen every 2 weeks on Thursday on the same day, that might be a bit nicer.
Yeah, that'd be a lot easier. Michael Dolan and Todd, can you guys take that to send out that invite for 2 weeks from today?
Yep, I'll take that, no problem.
Okay.
All right, nice.
All right, everyone, thank you very much.
Yes, thanks. Goodbye. See you later.
Bye.
Right.